That night, the mansion looked like something out of a dream, if dreams were made of diamonds, pride, and the quiet kind of cruelty money can buy. The chandeliers above glowed like constellations trapped in glass, every flicker of light spilling across the marble floors. The air shimmered with perfume and power. Laughter floated through the hall, soft and practiced, like the sound of people who had never had to worry about anything. Waiters moved like ghosts between golden tables. Every glass sparkled. Every smile was rehearsed. And near the door, almost invisible, stood Mrs. Grace. Her uniform was crisp but faded, the kind that told you she took care of it herself. The faint shine on her shoes wasn't from polish, it was from persistence. She was a black cleaning lady in a place where people like her weren't meant to be seen, only useful when the lights went out. But her eyes, warm and steady, weren't on the guests. They followed her son, 10-year-old Noah, who stood quietly in the corner, clutching a small, handmade card. It was nothing fancy. Just colored paper, a few glitter stickers, and the wobbly letters of a boy who wanted to say thank you. His mother had worked all week to help prepare for the Whitmore's charity gala, and he wanted to give something back. The music hushed for a moment as new guests arrived. Then she appeared, Amelia Whitmore. The billionaire's daughter. 18, maybe 19. Every inch of her was polished perfection. Golden hair, silver jewelry, and that untouchable kind of confidence born from never hearing the word no. The room seemed to glow brighter when she entered, and she knew it. Heads turned. Cameras flashed. She thrived on the attention like sunlight. That was when she saw him, Noah, standing small and nervous, his brown skin shining faintly under the chandelier light. He stepped forward shyly, holding up the card. "Excuse me," he said softly, "I made this for your dad. To say thank you." The room didn't expect to hear that voice, a child's voice, coming from the corner where the help usually stayed. Amelia's eyes dropped to the card, then up to his face. Her painted smile twisted. "Who invited the helps, kid?" she said, her voice slicing through the air. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Quick. The kind that hurts more because it's disguised as amusement. Several guests chuckled behind champagne glasses. Someone whispered, "Oh dear, how embarrassing." Noah froze. His small hands trembled, but he didn't lower the card. Grace felt the sting before her son did. She wanted to rush forward, to shield him, to gather him up and leave this room that smelled like roses and ridicule. But she couldn't move. Years of servitude had taught her one cruel truth: sometimes silence was survival. Noah's lips trembled just once. His eyes darted toward his mother. She gave him the smallest nod, the kind only a mother could understand. "Hold your head up, baby." Amelia tilted her head, amused by his silence. "A thank you card," she said mockingly. "How sweet. Maybe next time you can clean the tables instead." More laughter rippled. The sound clung to the walls, echoing longer than it should have. Across the room, Mr. Whitmore shook hands with the senator, smiling like a man who owned the world. He didn't see the scene. Or maybe he did and chose not to. Billionaires often have selective sight when it comes to discomfort that doesn't touch their name. Noah finally took a small step back, still holding the card. The silence after the laughter was heavy. Then, in a voice so soft yet steady, he said, "You shouldn't laugh at people you don't know." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. Conversations faltered. The violins hesitated. For a moment, everyone's eyes flicked between the girl of gold and the boy of courage. Amelia blinked, caught off guard. No one ever spoke to her that way. Especially not someone like him. The corners of her smile twitched, as if unsure whether to laugh again or glare. Then, to save face, she let out a quick, dismissive giggle. The others followed, eager to return to comfort. Grace finally crossed the room and knelt beside her son. She brushed his shoulder gently, whispering, "It's okay, baby. People show who they are when they think no one's watching." Her voice was calm, but her heart burned. She felt every pair of eyes on her back, the silent judgment, the invisible wall that always reminded her she didn't belong here. Noah lowered the card slowly. It slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the polished floor, landing face up. The gold glitter letters spelled two small words, "Thank you." They shimmered under the lights for a second before being stepped on by someone's designer shoe. Grace stood, took Noah's hand, and turned to leave. But before she did, she glanced toward Amelia. Their eyes met. For a brief second, something passed between them, shame, confusion, maybe even curiosity. But it was gone as quickly as it came. Amelia looked away, already distracted by her friends. Outside, The night air was cooler. The sound of laughter still spilled faintly from the open doors. Noah tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "why did she laugh? I didn't do anything wrong." Grace knelt and touched his face. "You didn't, baby. Sometimes, when people have everything, they forget how to be kind." She smiled softly, though her voice cracked. "But don't you ever forget who you are. Don't let them take your goodness." He nodded, but his eyes were wet. "I just wanted to make them smile." Grace's heart ached. She kissed his forehead. "One day, Noah, the world will see you for who you are. Maybe not today. But it will." Behind them, the music swelled again, violins, laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. The mansion sparkled as if nothing had happened. But something had. Something small and quiet. Inside, Amelia found herself glancing at the door where the boy had stood. For a reason she couldn't explain, his words echoed in her head. "You shouldn't laugh at people you don't know." She tried to shake it off, smiling for pictures, posing for cameras, letting the world see perfection. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his face, the calm eyes, the steady voice, the unshaken dignity of someone she'd thought beneath her. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. And in that glittering hall, where pride and beauty reigned supreme, a small, invisible crack appeared in the perfect glass world of the Whitmores. No one saw it that night. But it was there, waiting. Waiting for the moment when everything would break, and the truth would finally shine through. Because no one in that golden room, no guest, no billionaire, not even Amelia herself, could imagine that the quiet boy they laughed at would soon change all their lives forever. The next morning, the mansion felt colder than usual. The laughter that once filled its halls had vanished, leaving behind the faint echo of what had happened the night before. The chandeliers still sparkled, but their light felt hollow now, like something beautiful that had lost its warmth. The smell of spilled champagne clung to the air. Grace moved quietly through the grand hall with her cleaning cart, her steps soft, her eyes lowered. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence spoke for her. Whispers floated between the servants like invisible threads. "Did you see how they laughed at her boy?" one murmured. "Poor child," another said, shaking her head. "He didn't deserve that." But gossip didn't clean floors, and pity didn't pay bills. Grace pressed her mop against the marble with slow, careful strokes, as if scrubbing the laughter out of its polished surface. Every stroke felt like a memory she wished she could erase. Then came the sound that made her stomach tighten, heels. Sharp, steady, echoing down the corridor like a drumbeat of entitlement. Amelia Whitmore glided across the floor, her chin lifted, her face as flawless as a porcelain doll. She had forgotten, or pretended to forget, the look on that little boy's face. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe that was why her words came out sharp, like she needed to remind herself of her power. "Careful," Amelia said, her voice dripping with cold amusement. "You might miss a spot. I'd hate for my father to see fingerprints on his marble." Grace froze, her hand tightening around the handle of her mop. Her back straightened just slightly, but she didn't look up. "Yes, Miss Whitmore," she said quietly. Noah, sitting on a small stool nearby, looked up from his worn backpack. His little hands clenched into fists. His mother's silence burned in his chest like fire. "Mom," he said softly, the words trembling with hurt, "why do they talk to you like that?" Grace turned to him, her face soft but tired. She knelt until her eyes met his. There was no anger there, only the deep, unshakable calm of someone who had lived through storms far worse than words. "Because they don't know what real worth is," she whispered. Her hand brushed his cheek. "But you do. And that's what matters." Noah nodded, though his eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Grace smiled gently and stood again, returning to her work. Amelia walked on, pretending she hadn't heard a thing, but something in her chest tightened. The words echoed faintly, "They don't know what real worth is." She pushed the thought aside and told herself she didn't care. That afternoon, the mansion came alive again, this time for preparation. The Whitmores were hosting their annual charity event at the city hospital, a photo opportunity dressed up as compassion. Amelia loved those nights, cameras flashing, people praising her father, her name whispered with admiration. She didn't believe much in charity, but she believed in appearances. By sunset, the staff had ironed her gown, shined her shoes, and brushed her hair into perfect curls. As she stood before the mirror, she couldn't help but smile at her reflection. She was untouchable. Powerful. Beautiful. That was her world. People like Grace and Noah belonged in the background. That's how it had always been. Outside, dark clouds gathered. The sky was heavy, swollen with rain. But Amelia didn't notice. She slipped into her father's sleek black car, driver at the wheel, and they sped through the city lights toward the hospital. The streets shimmered with reflections of neon and street lamps. She scrolled through her phone, half listening to the driver's warning. Storm's getting rough, Miss Whitmore. Roads are slick. I'll be fine, she said lightly, her eyes fixed on her screen. But fate doesn't care about fine. The rain came harder. Sheets of water slammed against the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. The driver squinted through the blur. Visibility's bad. Maybe we should pull over. Amelia sighed impatiently. Just get me there, please. Moments later, the world exploded into chaos. A flash of lightning, a curve taken too fast, tires skidding on soaked asphalt, then a scream, metal twisting, glass shattering. The car spun, once, twice, before crashing into a ditch. The last thing Amelia heard was her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. When she opened her eyes, everything was white. The smell of antiseptic filled her nose. Her body ached all over. Her lips were dry. Machines beeped softly beside her. She blinked, trying to piece together where she was. A nurse appeared, calm and kind. You're safe, Miss Whitmore. You're in the hospital. Her voice was weak. What happened? You were in an accident, the nurse said gently. Your car went off the road. Someone found you and called for help just in time. Amelia frowned faintly. Her mind was foggy. Someone. The nurse smiled. A boy. He saw the crash, ran through the rain, and got help. You're very lucky. He might have saved your life. The words sank slowly, heavy and unreal. Amelia stared at the ceiling, her throat tightening. Who was he? She whispered. The nurse hesitated. We don't know. He left before the ambulance arrived. But the officers said he couldn't have been older than 10. 10. A boy. Amelia's heart began to race. Images flashed through her mind, a handmade card, trembling fingers, calm brown eyes. It couldn't be. Could it? She turned her head toward the window. Outside, rain still fell, soft and endless, like the world itself was washing something clean. For the first time in her life, Amelia felt small. Vulnerable. Human. The storm outside faded into a whisper, but inside her, something else was beginning, a quiet question she couldn't silence. Who was that boy? That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same thing, the boy's calm face from the party, the card in his hand, the words he'd said to her, you shouldn't laugh at people you don't know. She had laughed anyway. Now, somewhere out there, a nameless boy had saved her life. And she didn't even know his name. The hospital room smelled of medicine and quiet regret. Days had passed since the crash, but for Amelia Whitmore, time felt frozen. The pale morning light crept through the blinds, slicing thin silver lines across the room. Machines hummed softly beside her, a reminder that she was alive, and that someone had made sure of it. Her father, the billionaire Mr. Whitmore, stood by the window with his hands clasped behind his back, his reflection looking out over the city. He had made a few calls, used his name to find out who had pulled his daughter from the wreck. When the answer came, even he was silent. For once, money didn't make sense of things. Are you sure? Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Whitmore nodded. Yes. He's coming today. She stared at the clock. Each tick felt like judgment. A quiet unease filled the air, a kind of waiting that made the room smaller. She imagined someone brave, maybe older, a teenager, a young man. She wanted to thank him, to show gratitude, to put this guilt into words. But nothing could have prepared her for the door that opened next. It creaked softly, and a nurse stepped in first, holding the door wide. Then came a small shadow in the hallway. 2 small feet. A boy's voice. Miss Whitmore. Amelia's heart stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned her head slowly, disbelief flooding her face. It was him. Noah. The same little boy who had stood in her father's grand hall, holding a handmade card. The same boy she'd laughed at, the helps kid. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind him stood Mrs. Grace, still in her faded uniform, her hands folded respectfully. She looked tired, humble, but not ashamed. Never that. There was something unshakable in her eyes, the quiet strength of someone who knew who she was even when others didn't. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air was heavy, as if the truth itself had filled the room and no one could breathe around it. Finally, Grace broke the silence. "He saw your car lose control," she said softly. "He ran nearly 2 miles through the storm to get help. Barefoot. By the time he found the patrol, his feet were bleeding." Amelia's mouth trembled. Her fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. You saved me," she whispered. Noah nodded slowly. His voice was soft but steady. "I didn't want you to die. Everyone deserves another chance." Those words struck deeper than anything she'd ever heard. They weren't dramatic. They weren't meant to wound. But they landed like truth always does, quiet, undeniable, and impossible to run from. The room seemed to shrink. Even the machines went silent in her mind. Mr. Whitmore turned away, pretending to look out the window again, but his jaw clenched. His shoulders trembled, just slightly. For the first time in years, he felt something his money couldn't protect him from: shame. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Every word she'd ever thrown at that boy, every laugh, every cruel smirk, came rushing back to her. The memory of his small, calm voice at the party echoed inside her. You shouldn't laugh at people you don't know. Now here he was. The boy she didn't know. The one she had judged without mercy. The one who had saved her life. She looked at his feet, small, scabbed, wrapped in bandages. Her throat tightened. "You ran, barefoot," she whispered again, as if saying it might make it more real. He shrugged a little. "It wasn't far," he said simply, though his mother's eyes said otherwise. Amelia's father turned back toward them. "You risked your life for my daughter," he said, his voice low and trembling. "Why?" Noah looked up at him. "Because she needed help. That's what my mom taught me. You help people, even when they don't help you." The words hung in the air like a prayer. Grace lowered her head, tears slipping quietly down her cheek. Amelia couldn't hold back anymore. She covered her face, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she said through broken sobs. "I'm so sorry, Noah." He looked at her, confused but gentle. "It's okay," he said. "You were scared. I get scared too." But Amelia shook her head, tears running freely now. "No. I wasn't scared. I was cruel. You tried to give me kindness, and I gave you shame. And you still saved me." Silence fell again, but this time, it wasn't cold. It was something sacred, like forgiveness had quietly stepped into the room. Mr. Whitmore stepped forward, placing a hand on Noah's small shoulder. He swallowed hard. "Son," he said quietly, "you've taught us more than all the people who ever stood in my house." His voice broke slightly, rough with something he hadn't felt in years: humility. Amelia reached out, her hand trembling. "Noah," she whispered. "Can I?" He hesitated, then stepped closer. She took his hand, small and warm, and held it tightly. For the first time, she didn't see the son of a cleaning lady. She saw something greater, a heart braver than hers, purer than her world had ever shown her. Her tears fell onto his hand like confession drops. "Thank you," she said. "You gave me my life back. But you also gave me something else, a chance to be better." Grace smiled faintly, pride softening her tired face. "That's all he ever wants to do," she said. "To make things better." Mr. Whitmore turned away again, his eyes wet, his voice barely a whisper. "We owe you everything," he said. Noah shook his head. "No, sir. You don't owe me anything. Just be kind. That's enough." The simplicity of that sentence filled the room. It broke the invisible walls between wealth and worth, pride and humanity. Amelia squeezed his hand again, her tears slowing. "You're right," she said. "Kindness is enough." For a long time, no one spoke. The morning light grew brighter, flooding the room in gold. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world seemed still, waiting, as if it too was learning from this small boy with quiet eyes. And in that moment, Amelia Whitmore, the girl who had everything, realized what it meant to have nothing. No title, no beauty, no money could buy what she saw in him. Dignity, grace, love. When they left the room, Noah turned back and smiled. "I'm glad you're okay," he said simply. Amelia smiled through her tears. "I am," she whispered. "Because of you." As the door closed, the air in the room felt lighter. Mr. Whitmore exhaled slowly, his face soft with reflection. For once, he didn't see himself as a billionaire. He saw himself as a father, one who had almost lost his daughter, and maybe his soul, to pride. Outside the hospital, the sun broke through the clouds. Grace took her son's hand. "See, Noah," she said softly. "Kindness always finds its way back." And in that golden morning light, for the first time in her life, Amelia Whitmore understood that the richest hearts don't live in mansions. They live in people who give without asking anything in return. The chandeliers shimmered once again above the grand Whitmore ballroom, their golden light spilling across the polished marble like liquid fire. But this time, the glow felt different, softer, warmer. There were no arrogant laughs echoing through the hall, no whispers of superiority or sharp glances at the help. Tonight, the air was quiet with humility and something rare in that mansion, truth. Weeks had passed since the crash, yet its echo still lived in every corner of the Whitmore home. Amelia had spent those weeks healing, not just her body, but her heart. She had visited Grace and Noah more times than anyone expected. She helped Grace clean, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to understand what it felt like to serve without being seen. She walked with Noah in the gardens, listened to him talk about school, and sometimes just sat in silence beside him, learning what real strength looked like. Now, the mansion's annual charity gala had arrived. Reporters, politicians, and socialites filled the room, expecting another glittering night of self-congratulation. But Amelia had a different plan. When her father called her to the stage, she hesitated for a moment, her heart thudding in her chest. The last time she stood here, she had been a different person, shallow, blind, untouchable. Now, her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone. She looked out at the crowd, and her gaze found Grace and Noah standing at the edge of the hall. Grace wore her usual uniform, but she stood taller now, dignity radiating from her like light. Beside her, Noah looked calm, his small smile steady, eyes bright with innocence that somehow carried wisdom beyond his years. Amelia took a deep breath. "A few weeks ago," she began, her voice soft but clear, "I did something I'm not proud of. I mocked someone who showed me more humanity than I've ever shown anyone." The room fell silent. Forks froze mid-air. Murmurs died. The violinists paused, their bows hovering above strings. All eyes turned toward her. She swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. "That night, when I thought my life was over, when my car crashed in the rain, the person who saved me wasn't a stranger in a uniform or a man with power. It was a 10-year-old boy. The boy I laughed at. The boy I called the help." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even those who had been at the mansion that humiliating night looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Tears shimmered in Amelia's eyes, but she didn't hide them. "His name is Noah. And his mother, Grace, has worked for my family for years. But they've given us something no money can buy, a lesson in what it means to be human." Grace covered her mouth as tears began to fall. Noah looked at his shoes, shy but smiling, his small hands tucked into his pockets. Amelia continued, voice trembling but strong, "When I laughed at him, he stayed quiet. When I needed help, he didn't hesitate. He ran through the storm, barefoot, bleeding, just to save someone who had made him feel small. And he did it because his mother taught him something I never understood until that night, that kindness is never wasted, even when given to those who don't deserve it." The audience sat in stunned silence. Some wiped their eyes. Others looked ashamed, reflecting on their own quiet cruelties, the times they'd looked down on someone because of what they wore or where they came from. Amelia looked at her father. Mr. Whitmore's usually stern face was soft now, humbled. He stepped forward, taking the microphone gently from her hand. His voice, usually commanding, now carried a quiet reverence. "No family," he said slowly, his eyes finding Grace in the crowd, "should ever be treated as less than human. Tonight, this house, and this name, change forever." He looked at Noah and smiled, his expression breaking with emotion. "From this day forward, we are establishing the Noah Grace Fund for Courage and Kindness. A scholarship for children who show the kind of bravery and compassion that saved my daughter's life." The hall erupted into applause. But it wasn't the usual shallow kind, it was heavy with feeling, with admiration, with awakening. Grace pressed her hands to her face, weeping openly, while Noah stood still, his eyes wide. Amelia turned toward him, stepping down from the stage. As the applause continued, she knelt so she could look him in the eyes. "You taught me what real wealth is," she said softly. Noah smiled, that same small, gentle smile that had melted every wall between them. "Kindness doesn't cost anything," he said simply. That one sentence cut through the noise of applause like light through fog. The crowd fell silent again, letting those words sink in. Kindness doesn't cost anything. And yet it could change everything. Amelia pulled him into a hug, her tears falling into his hair. Grace watched, her heart full, her pride uncontainable. For once, she wasn't the invisible woman in the corner. She was the mother of a hero, not because he had saved a billionaire's daughter, but because he had reminded a world lost in wealth what it meant to be good. Mr. Whitmore stepped closer, resting a hand on Grace's shoulder. His voice was soft, almost breaking. "You raised him well," he said. "Better than all the tutors and school's money could buy." Grace smiled through her tears. "I just taught him what my mother taught me," she said. "That hearts shine brighter than diamonds." Later that night, as the guests left, they didn't chatter about money or status. They spoke about Noah, about courage, about kindness, about grace. The mansion that had once been a symbol of pride had become a place of redemption. Amelia stood near the window, watching Noah chase the light of the chandeliers as if they were stars. For the first time, she didn't see a servant's child. She saw hope, the kind of hope that doesn't wear crowns or live in marble halls. She turned to her father. "Do you think people can really change?" she asked quietly. Mr. Whitmore smiled faintly. "Only when they're shown how." Outside, the night air was cool. Grace and Noah walked home hand in hand, the glow of the mansion fading behind them. They didn't take the limousine offered, or the money, or the cameras. They took something richer, dignity, peace, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they had changed hearts. As Amelia watched them go, her chest ached with something new, gratitude. The kind that humbles you. The kind that makes you want to do better. She whispered softly to herself, "True wealth isn't measured in gold or marble halls. It's found in hearts that choose compassion over pride." And as the last chandelier dimmed, that truth lingered, a reminder that sometimes, the richest souls are the ones the world overlooks.